Hiya Benchmates, welcome to episode 26 of Beyond the Box Art, with a special episode to coincide with the DBMK launch and what's coming next. Please welcome your host, Paul Pendleton-Brown, Brownie, Mike Baldwin, Balders, and Shane Cowie.
Hi Benchmates, and welcome to a special edition of Beyond the Box Art, episode 26. This episode is something a little different, because today we're shining the spotlight firmly on one of the most talked about new manufacturers to hit the shops, DBMK. They were a guest of ours a couple of episodes back, and this time we're joined by the whole team. We have Hiya as well as Will with us, and we'll come to those in just a second. But whilst you are listening to this episode, they are launching their first major release, the 132nd Sea Fury at Navy Wings at Yeovilton. So whilst they are talking in the hangar, you're listening hopefully to this at the same time. So you're going to find out all the juicy bits instead of having to wait for everyone that's in the hangar to report back on it later on the day on the socials or in the magazines. So you're getting a bit of an inside scoop. So in this special feature, we're talking about the thinking behind the Sea Fury on its first major release, the research, engineering and decision making that goes into making a brand new large-scale kit, the projects already announced and the ones possibly waiting in the wings, little teaser there, how DBMK sees the future of high-end aircraft modelling, and the relationship between DBMK and Skunkworks, whose own projects are generating plenty of interest across the hobby. In short, if you've been wondering where DBMK came from, then you're about to find out. So Benchmates, settle in at the bench, grab a brew, and let's go behind the scenes of one of the hobby's most exciting new manufacturers. This is Beyond the Box Art Special with DBMK, and it starts now. So, Will, good evening.
Good evening.
How are you doing?
Very good indeed, and very, very good to have got to this stage.
I can imagine it is. And Hiya, welcome to the show for the first time.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. So obviously we had the lowdown with Will when he was on the show recently. If you can give our Benchmates a little bit of a background on your good self.
Yeah, what did I start with? I'm from Odessa, Ukraine. I was born and raised in Soviet Union. Served in the Soviet army since I was, for 2 years, conscription army service. I was serving actually with the air defense. And despite the fact that I love aircraft, my prime task was to shoot them down in case of Cold War. And at some point, our air defense unit was moved to special forces and we changed tactics, changed weapons. And my job at that point was to find landing zones for jump jets, Harriers and the helicopters and destroy as many of them as I can. I'm glad I didn't have to. That was Cold War at its highest point, 1985, 1987. And part of my service at the very end, I had to serve in Afghanistan. I didn't even know that I was sent to Afghanistan until we landed actually at Kabul airport. And it was scary. After army service, I came back to civilian life, restored myself in the maritime college, got a degree. By trade, I am a nautical navigator, believe it or not. That I've done only a couple of years on big ships. And that was so-called Soviet, state-run companies, which close equivalent of merchant navy in Great Britain, And at that point, we've been shipping Soviet troops between Soviet Union, Cuba, Angola, Mozambique, Ethiopia, you name it. All these nice exotic countries. So, but it didn't last long. As soon as the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, I lost a job, like about 30,000 others who served for this company. And I was doing all sorts of things, working as a bodyguard, waiter, in a croupier, so you name it. I've done a lot. And at some point, I went to Moldova as a bodyguard for Canadian journalist because he was doing this bunch of articles about civil war in the post-Soviet space. And it came to the point that I couldn't take it anymore, and I decided to immigrate. So in 1994, I moved to UK, and I was working for security companies as a bodyguard as well. After that, I dramatically changed the course of my life and joined a company which organizes exhibitions, believe it or not. And I was organizing and selling security and fire safety exhibitions. That's I've done for 14 years. And in 2014, when Russia invaded Ukraine and annexed Crimea, I was too loud about it, and I was offered to leave the company. That was redundancy, because most of our business at that point was in the former Soviet Union, and Russia in particular. 75% of revenue was coming from Russia. So obviously people like myself were not welcome there. And then after that, I was doing bits and bobs, and coming back to scale modeling. I'm a scale modeler since 1975. I was 8 years old. My mom gave me a present, a massive tank to glue together, so KV-85. So that was my first kit. And ever since then, I never stopped putting plastic together. Unfortunately, for last 20 odd years, I didn't finish any of the kits. So they're all in the pre-painted stage. So ready to be painted, but never finished. In 1997, I was in touch with a Ukrainian company, Siga. At that point, they were making Soviet armor and American attack aircraft in 72nd scale, and they asked me whether I can help them to sell those. So I got in touch with David Hahn, and kind of like was representing that company. And from that point on, I was selling Ukrainian kits to UK and European market. And it went so well that in 2009, I was working with the Armory Model Group. In 2011, my business partner at that time and we bought Copper State Models and moved it to UK. In 2015, my business partner at that time took some hostile action and overtook the company. I've lost my share in it. And in 2020, Will and we decided to organize DBMK. And from that point on, I never look back, because we're doing what we both want us to do. And it's exciting trip, exciting path, I'd say, because Will has got an orthodox vision, let's put it in this way, which makes me very, very kind of like interested to go and try all this, and it works. And I'm really kind of like enjoying it, what I'm doing at the moment, so yeah.
Okay, well, Will said in an interview you would explain what DBMK actually stood for.
I never did.
Yeah, I can do that. It's Deutsche Bahn model kits. It's very because we do accuracy is a priority, you see. So it's as precise as the Deutsche Bahn, the German railway. It's one of the ways of explaining it. But to be honest with you, in order to get to the bottom of it, we need to get a bottle of vodka out, put barbecue on, and I'll tell you everything about it.
Oh dear, that sounds like it's for the After Dark edition of the show. Right, okay, so obviously our benchmates are waiting to hear what we've got to talk about today, and it's the 132nd Sea Fury launch at Naval Wings at Yeovilton. So obviously this has been building up for a long time, and the journey's virtually come to the end, hopefully. And you should have a stash of Furies possibly in your hands. How's the progression going with the development? Or more to the point, the boxing?
It's been a journey to get here. We were down at Plastek last Friday, boxing the first kits up. And on Thursday morning, Mark Thompson, who runs Plastek, was still finessing the molds to get them to work properly. So it's been nail biting right to the finish. But we're here. I think that when we scanned the Sea Fury back in October 22, we never had an idea it was going to take 3.5 years to get it to market. I think we were anticipating 2. We've learned a huge amount along the way. And I think that the Sea Fury, it's a fantastic subject. It really needed to be done justice in 32nd scale. And I think that we've pushed the envelope for injection molding as far as we possibly can to deliver something that is easy to put together, detailed, but also accurate. And to Ilya's point, accuracy is the priority. And we've got a clear set of principles, and we're very happy to finally get to this point. So yeah, I mean, it's a big day for us. It's really the formal launch of the company as a kit manufacturer. And yeah, we're really excited.
So does that mean that you and Ilya are now actually putting all the injection molded parts into the boxes, or have you got somebody doing that for you?
We have somebody doing this for us. Mark Thompson and his company does it for us. What I wanted to add to Will's statement, this particular kit has got minimal aftermarket parts. Most of it, absolute majority of parts are plastic, and really, whatever you have in the kit, you don't need anything else. And that's amazing engineering for me, amazing design from that perspective. So yes, we have a plate with the Photo-etch parts, but that's nature of the beast. Some parts you can't get around, but do them in the Photo-etch, and the rest of it is just plastic. And because I like small parts, because my favorite scale is 72nd. By the way, whatever Will says from this point on, please remember one thing. The God created a man in 72nd scale. Everything else is secondary. All right.
I would have agreed with you a few years ago prior to my cataract operation. And then my stash of 672nd had to be disposed of because I just hadn't found it too difficult. So hence why I've gone to 48th and 32nd. So you're partially right.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, because I feel like I'm going the same way. My eyes very often, especially in the evening, failing me, so I have to put away plastic and the knives and everything else away. So yeah, but when it comes to detailing, especially cockpit, you have to work as if the parts are so small, so fine, that you feel like you're dealing with the 72nd scale.
I get what you're saying. Okay, and of course, when you say that you don't need aftermarket, well, of course, Chris from Skunkwork, who's on the call we'll be speaking to later, has got something slightly different, which isn't included in the kit to such a degree, and we'll talk about that when we get to that part of the show. But to talk about a sublime Centaurus, that's an understatement. Anyway, okay, so anything else you need to add about the Sea Fury?
All we'd like to say is please buy direct from us. It's on our website. We'll get it out. Now it's in stock. We'll get it out literally within a couple of days. The more we get orders through our website, the faster we can turn around and go on to our next projects. We're very excited about it, but ultimately this is a business. It has to wash its face, and the quicker we get the return on the investment for the Sea Fury, the quicker we get on to the next subjects.
Fantastic. And obviously one of the next subjects is what you've already talked about, and the one that you first started, which is the scimitar. So how's that coming along?
That is actually coming along very nicely. And today our 3D designer sent us a bunch of screenshots or renders of the ordnance, pylons, adapters, and so on and so on. Because you see, prior to whatever was hanging off the wing, I thought they were pylons. Scimitar proved me wrong. No, they know not only pylons but adapters as well. You see, we did a lot of very extensive technical research on the subject, and the Sol Sky Museum was unbelievably good with us when we asked them to prepare technical materials for scimitar. I thought there will be a couple of volumes like technical manual, pilot's notes, something like that. They actually rolled out a trolley with about 200 kilos of books on the subject. And I brought with me A3 scanner, and when I looked at the books, at these foliants, and I looked at Will, I said, Will, there is no way I can scan it within one day. So we pulled out our mobile phones and started just taking pictures because it was much quicker.
I'm guessing you're talking about the APs, the Air Ministry publications, so Vol 1 to Vol 5, which are the maintenance manuals of the aircraft.
It must be, to be honest with you, I didn't look at the title page because they're massive. For instance, the parts catalog, it's about 4 volumes, 1,000 pages each. At some point after like 4 o'clock, we started at 9 in the morning, but at 4 o'clock, I said to Will, Will, we have to take a decision what pages we will take picture of or not, because we need to take on the major modules, pictures of the major modules. Otherwise, we won't be able to finish it. So yeah, we didn't even have lunch on that day.
You've got to get your priorities right.
That's it. And when it went to the pilot notes, the very first page was a description of Scimitar's roles. Because you see, officially it's Fighter Mark 1. That's it. And technically, there were 9 roles for this aircraft, including day fighter, recce, bomber, nuclear bomber, refueler, smoke screen mission, air to air. That's when the aircraft would be armed with the sidewinders, and the air to ground role. And it was unbelievable. When you get to the information like this, it shows the full scope of capabilities of this aircraft. And obviously, you have to pay attention to the modules which would let you to prepare this aircraft for this or that role. And 9 different recce noses. So it's just unbelievable. And a lot of additional equipment in the cockpit, depending on the role. For the kit, we've chosen, obviously, recce, interceptor, air to ground, a nuclear bomber, and a bomber roles. We had to drop a lot of roles for that because there is no way you can put all of it in one kit.
Gotcha. So you mean multiple releases of the kit coming out? Good news.
I think at some point we will have to come back to it and do it, because at the moment we just want to close this niche, if you know what I mean, because scimitar deserves better attention. I have 2 kits of scimitar, one of them Hanon's kit and another one Dynabacter, I believe, resin one.
Yes.
When we put into system all the technical information we have on the subject on scimitar, I've discovered, I dug out about half dozen of different drawings for the scimitar. None of them is accurate. None of them is accurate because our 3D scan didn't match the drawings. So we had to start from scratch, from the edges, because you have general dimensions and so on, and you start general geometry. It's all correct. And the interesting thing is, when we checked the dimensions of the aircraft and check it against the 3D scanner, the difference was 2 millimeters in the wingspan. And I would contribute it to the fact that we scanned the aircraft on the frosty day. The metals kind of like squeezes, so that's why. But yeah, it will be super accurate and super detailed model kit. Will, I'm sure you got a lot to add to it.
No, I think you covered it nicely, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
Where are we with the Hornet release?
Well, the Hornet's been released. This is one we have actually boxed ourselves. So we've had a couple of Saturdays boxing up the first couple of hundred, and we've been sending those out. But we only, for example, got our Royal Mail business account this week, which has meant we've only just started to send the international orders out. But effectively, we've been waiting where the Hornet's been ordered with the Sea Fury, we're sending both together. We're kind of getting into our stride. So they are available now on the website as well.
Fantastic. Okay, so the big question is, what's next?
So the policy that we're adopting is that we make an announcement when we've completed a release.
Okay.
So effectively, with the release of the Sea Fury, it's time to announce our next subject. Now, we announce the subjects considerably further in advance, basically when we start working on them. And the reason for that is that we find it we've had some brilliant input from people who we didn't know about until it became known that we were doing a project. And it's meant that we've got access to Spitfires, Spitfire Mark 14, Spitfire Mark 19s that we just would never have got if we'd waited till the design was more or less finished. It also allows us to use various subject matter experts to check the CAD. So that's why we announce it when we start working on it rather than when it's closer to release. But that said, we're going to be delivering the next releases far faster than the Sea Fury. We've learned a lot along the way, and it's shown in things like the scimitar, where I think it's because we've revisited it in light of our experience. It's going to be a much better kit. It's going to be a much better kit to build for the modeler, and we've solved a lot of the design problems that at the beginning we would have struggled with. So our next announcement is going to be an Apache.
Ah, okay, that's a little bit of a curveball. I thought you were fixed wing rather than rotary. So, with something like the Apache, I take it you had to get a license from Boeing to produce a kit of this nature.
Well, the thing is, it's not probably the Apache you're thinking of. We're talking the A36 Apache. And in fact, the next subject that we're working on is a family of Allison Mustangs. And we're going to go all the way through from the NA-73, the original Mustang Mark 1 for the RAF, and we're going all the way through to the P.51A / Mustang 2, which is the NA-99.
Wow. Okay, you got me at Mustang. Absolutely fantastic. I just sat here. I'm actually recording at work, and for those who've listened to previous shows know, I'm in the control tower for the old RAF Aberporth, and during World War II, 595 Squadron operated a single Mustang 1. So what a more apt place to announce a kit of this, because I need to place an order for one now. Pull your finger out, get it released. Okay then, so obviously the Mustang, you've obviously been working on it in the background. Why did you think the P-51 Mustang in 32nd was the right subject for DBMK to tackle next?
Well, the first thing is it's an iconic aircraft, the Mustang. Very good kits for the D, and the B is about to be released by Eduard, who are, again, part of our coalition, and Zucamura, both due to release one this year. The Allison Mustang, I think, is actually the purest in terms of lines of the breed. It's a shallower fuselage. It's leaner. Interestingly, they were used right up to the end of the war and post-war by the RAF. They weren't replaced by the Bs and the Ds. At low level, the early Mustangs were every bit as good, if not better, because they didn't have the extra weight. They weren't carrying around the extra weight. So it's a fantastic subject. Ilya and I visited the US 3 years ago, and we had the opportunity to scan the XP-51, which is at the brilliant Oshkosh Museum. Well worth a visit if you've never been. And that is effectively an RAF Mustang 1 that was diverted off the RAF production batch to be given to the US and tested by them. So we got a very, very good scan of that. And we've got the full factory production drawings for the Mustang from I think it's the A36 through to the P.51H. So we've got over 20,000 drawings. We've got the ordnance that have been worked out. We've been collecting information for 3 years. And now with the Sea Fury being released, it's time to pull the trigger and it's time to get on with it.
Fantastic. Okay, Boulders.
When approaching a subject like the Mustang, how do you go about gathering the information and the reference material needed to produce a kit at this level? And I'm guessing the little breadcrumb you dropped in our previous interview about the fin being 1 degree out of true was related to this?
It was, although that was a D, not the XP-51, which actually was flying until not that long ago. But no, it was actually the D next to it that was kinked.
So that was the little breadcrumb then. That was just the little teaser.
It was a little breadcrumb that I dropped. So, accuracy is a priority. So there are a limited number of ways of really getting to grips with it. So the first one is the scan, because that gives you a 3D image of a real live aircraft with all its curves, all the surface irregularities, all the configurations, the way it's been rigged, and you have to treat it with care. It's a museum aircraft, but it has flown. Typically the ones that fly are in rather better shape. And then you back it up with photographs and factory drawings. And ideally, it's almost like you're triangulating every single design decision off more than one source of information. What we generally don't use are other people's free view drawings, because we feel that primary research is the best way of ensuring accuracy.
So obviously the Mustang family is a huge family because there's obviously lots of variants. Obviously you've briefly touched on it, but which variants are you planning to cover? And how did you decide which versions make sense for yourselves as a manufacturer to produce?
So we're going to do the entire Allison Mustang family. So it starts, the North American used a way of designating their model numbers, and all the drawings start with that 2 or 3 digit identifier. So the first Mustang, it was the NA-73. That was built, as I'm sure many people know, a British requirement, and it was delivered in a very, very short period. The Mustang 1 then was developed into the NA-83, still the Mustang 1. And then from there, it became, you had the P.51A, which is the one with the 4 20mm cannons. You had the A36 Apache, which was a way for the US to buy the Mustang because they had money for a dive bomber. So they re-engineered it very quickly to become a reasonably effective dive bomber. Although for most of the units actually used it in the classic Mustang role. And then the Mustang 2/P.51A, which actually got the same wing as a P.51B, but is very much a final incarnation of the Mustang. And then the PR versions in the US service the F.6A and the F.6B. So we're going to cover all of those in the same way that we're covering all the two-stage Griffon Spitfires, because we feel that once you start, and a lot of the parts are applied to, for example, Mustang flaps are labeled, if you look at the factory drawing, right through to the P.51D, it's got a 73 in front of it. So you know that the flaps for the Mustang are the same all the way through. And if you're tooling the parts, you can use the parts in the molds really to get that coverage. And the challenge then is how to make sure that you've captured all the marks.
Blown away, to be honest, that you're doing all that. So that's definitely going to be exciting for a lot of Mustang modelers out there, especially in 32nd.
Yeah, and we hope people like it. I mean, it's a beautiful aircraft. When you get really into it, the design is really clever. It's got lots of really interesting little features to it that meant that it aerodynamically, as a flying machine, people know it's a really good design. And the Allison Mustang really is in its truest form. Very, very light, very slim, fast, maneuverable, very long ranged. And it's worth saying that the first Aria fighter to go into Germany, and it would have been the first Allied fighter to go into Germany, was actually a Mustang. It's an Allison Mustang, quite early on in 1942. So it's a fantastic flying machine, and it's one of the ones that was used really right into the post Second World War time, post May 1945, in the RAF tactical recce units, just because it performed its job so well.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be good to see once. I'll be looking forward to seeing the CAD drawings when they're posted on and stuff like that. So I'll be very looking forward to that.
Yeah, I can't wait. And we're just kind of on a cusp of starting. There are some excellent books. Colin Ford, who has written a number of books, including the excellent Win Leader NA Mustang RAF Service Part 1, has agreed to help us and has pointed us in the direction of some other books to buy. One of them on the production of the Mustang. So factory drawings of it pictures of it being built in a factory, which are actually really useful because you get to see what it looks like inside before it's joined together. And it is a really good reference in its own right. So yeah, we're really looking forward to this one. One of the nice things is that, as we found with the Griffon Spitfire, is that you learn so much along the way. And you find out things that just people actually generally don't know. They've been forgotten in the mists of time. And it's like, so that's why that's like this. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. I can see why the engineers would have addressed or tackled that problem in that way.
Okay, another good book that I got myself recently was the Detail Scale publication with the early Mustangs. Obviously, Rock Rozak and the crew actually did a 3-part series on the Mustang, but obviously book 1 covers most of the subjects that you're talking about. Have you been working with Detail Scale as well?
Yes, they've been helping us out, particularly on the F.11F and the F.105. And Bert Kinsey has been really, really helpful. And the F.11F has taken rather longer than we anticipated, to be honest with you, which is really frustrating for us. But that's been great and has really helped us and introduced us to people to bring that to fruition.
Fantastic. Okay, in that case, Shane.
Yeah, guys, I think on behalf of us and ultimately all our benchmates across the world, I just want to take the opportunity really to thank you both for sharing the news about the Mustang and to do all the variants. Like, it's just incredible. You guys are going to be really, really busy for a number of years. But what I would say, if you're going to be doing all the variants.
No, I mean, the thing is that the way we look at it, it's the subject that we're doing. And it's like the Allison Mustang is a nicely kind of ring-fence subject, like the Griffon Spitfires, or two-stage Griffon Spitfire is a ring-fence subject. And we may not release all the Spitfires before we get onto the Mustang. We're more likely to stitch them in together. But yeah, and the intention is to basically you could go through the whole story, the aviation story, the engineering story, really right from the starting point all the way through to the logical endpoint. And the P.51B, Eduardo will no doubt do a fantastic job. I can't wait to get a hold of mine in July. So we're stopping at the Allison Mustangs.
Yeah. Well, like I say, to take the opportunity to announce it to us whilst you're down in Yeovilton to our listeners, so it goes live at the same time. It's a nice touch. So thank you guys for that.
No, thank you for having us on.
So where do you see the market demand and perhaps other subjects coming up in the future?
Well,
Hang on a second. You said you announce something every time you release a kit. You've already announced that the Hornet's out in the shops and available for sale now. The Seafield's just hit the shops. So that means there should be 2 announcements, not 1.
correct. We've got another announcement to make as well. So our next subject is going to be a family of F.86 Sabre day fighters.
Oh, hang on.
So the plan is to do...
Hang on. A whole range of Sabres. Do you know how bad my bank balance is going to be affected by this?
Brown is going to declare bankruptcy.
Oh, I'm very, very sorry about that. But yeah, I mean, it's a great subject and it's one that's long overdue. The Hasegawa Sabre kit is from the early 70s. The kinetic one, which is, I think, probably has a similar origin, was 2007. The kind of state of art's moved on since then. And I think that we're looking to do the whole, let's call it the J47 engined Sabre family. So the A, the E, the F, the Longwind F, and the Canadair Sabres up to the 4 as effectively in the same way we've done for the 2-stage Griffon Spitfires and we're doing for the Allison Mustang. Start at the beginning and finish at the end, basically.
That's amazing news, guys. That is absolutely brilliant. You're going to make a lot of people very, very happy indeed. So just to go over that a little bit, because you mentioned the Hasegawa kit, we are talking 32nd scale, right?
We are talking 32nd scale, most definitely. I mean, the Hasegawa and the Academy kits are pretty good in 48 scale. I know that the slatted wing is something that people want, and the A conversion, I know that Clearpop have brought that out recently, although it hasn't had a particularly wide circulation. It's a lovely kit, but I think it's really time to do it in 32nd scale. But we will be doing all the wings, and we will be doing the early V windscreen and the later windscreen as well.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. In terms of the variants and development timeline, how do you see these projects rolling out over the coming years?
Well, the thing is that we've got multiple designers. So we've lined up the designers in terms of what they're going to work on. And the time is right. We're just finishing up another project. And in terms of the CAD design before it moves to the next stage in the design process. So next on the list is the Big Sabre. And it's a subject that its time is to do it is now, basically. We've got scans. Yes, some of the museum aircraft are an assemblage of parts. But luckily, the assemblage of parts means that we can use, for example, the tail of the Sabre that's at Coventry will give us the structure and tail planes. We've scanned an E, we've scanned an F. We're going to do a little bit more scanning as well, just to confirm a couple of the details. But we're going to be helped by Duncan Curtis, who is the guru on all things Sabre and has been extremely helpful with this project so far, and to really get it right and to nail it, basically. And yeah, the Sabre is iconic. It's, in many ways, it's the Mustang of the 50s. And I think that there are a good range of schemes. The one that the box art is actually was based at Manston is an F. And Manston is about 10 miles from where I live. And so it seemed to make sense to put that as one of the first sets of markings that we've got for it. And yeah, it's a beautiful looking machine, very effective in its role, quite a long life. People were still flying them into the 70s and early 80s. An interesting range. A lot of countries flew them. They saw a lot of combat, not necessarily after the US use in the Korean War. And yeah, it's really a perfect subject for us to do.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Borders.
Right, so just going back to what we've just been talking about, obviously you've announced quite a few projects recently. What's your approach to announcing future kits, and how do you balance building excitement whilst keeping expectations realistic?
That's a really good question. So the key thing for us is we want to build kits that are accurate and that are buildable. And we've had, by sharing the kit design and sharing the renders as we've gone through, we've had a huge amount of help. For example, suggestions on how to do the radiator fairings of the Spitfire. And we've done it in a way that means there's no internal seam line. And that was a great idea from Guy Wilson. And it's things like that we wouldn't have come across, we wouldn't have thought of. Also around accuracy as well. I think I mentioned last time about the aileron position on the Sea Fury with the wings folded, is we want to avoid those by the time we get to tooling. So the more people that get a chance to see the renders, the more things like that will pick up. Because with the best will in the world, no one knows everything. And even with scans and everything like that, you still miss stuff. So our approach is one in, one out. For every kit we release, we'll announce the next one. And that way, hopefully people realize that we're not just coming up with a long list, like certain manufacturers, that there are some kits that then release 15 years after they first announced. That's not our intention. We announce the kits when we start the design process to allow us to really optimize the product so it is accurate and it's buildable. And people are extremely generous with their time and with their knowledge. With the Spitfire 19, for example, a Swedish gentleman called Thomas Enedal, who everyone's looked at the Spitfire 18 thread on Brett Modeler will recognize Thomas. He's helping out and going to the Swedish National Archives, where they've got pretty much a full set of Mark 19 drawings. Because there are a couple of things we need to get right around the hood that I'm just thought of a canopy that I'm not quite sure that we've got. And also whether the fairings for the dorsal cameras are straight down. I think they're actually slightly slanted. And so we're looking to get that level of, it really is, as I see it, a coalition of the willing. And the only way we can build that coalition is by having a gestation period that's in public, rather than, I far prefer to do that and get the kit that is really accurate and looks the part than to, do an announcement, release something relatively quickly and then realize that actually there are better ways there would have been better ways of either the kit design or there are inaccuracies that you've encountered that someone else knows about and you haven't. We're really, Ilya and I are both really committed to accuracy. We're both scale modelers. We both come from the accuracy end of the spectrum, I think, and so that's what we've found is the best way of getting that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always better to have another set of eyes to look at something, because you can look at something for so long that you don't see it. And if you've got somebody with a fresh set of eyes that looks at the same thing, they go, that's not quite right. And obviously when you put it on social media and you're advertising what you're bringing out and you get all those things, obviously it does help. Some don't, but 99.9% generally give you positive feedback and say that's something might not be quite right, but no, it's exciting times ahead for DBMK and scary times ahead for people's bank balances and wallets.
We hope so, but look, we're doing the subjects that we love, and I know that I look at the Air Force subjects. Ilya really loves the Navy ones, but we've got lots of the latter coming up as well. We're not yet ready to announce them, but they're coming.
And not necessarily in 30-second scale.
And not in 30-second scale, no, exactly.
Right, so this is bringing Chris in. Hi, Chris.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Not a problem at all. Right, what's been your personal modelling journey that led you to being involved with projects like this, Chris?
Okay, how long you got? I'll start from the beginning, as I've told some people.
And we're out of time.
Right. So basically my interest in models started with my father. We went to Eastbourne on the East Coast to Gamley's, a toy shop. And I used to be an avid collector of Matchbox cars. But it was during that time, we went this particular time in the summer, I always remember it, in 76, that I found a model kit stand with the blister packs and bag packs of Airfix and stuff from the new boxes that were coming out. And what caught my eye was a fallen Nat. So I had to do a lot of cajoling and encouragement towards my father to say, can we get that instead of a Matchbox car? And eventually he relented, so he bought that for me. And I remember going home to build that back in the summer on the kitchen table and loved it so much I took it to bed and played with it, fell asleep and broke it. But that's where my modelling interest started, and just bought kits. I used to have a paper around and bought kits as I could do, all sorts of kits, and there's a shop next door, so I'd get my money at the end of the week, go next door, buy a kit. It could be a B-17, a helicopter of some sort, Spitfires, Hurricanes, and it's generally every week just build one. Of course, painting was a bit difficult for me because being younger, I couldn't have paint so much. It was a bit difficult, but I persevered and then just got better at it over time and kept doing that. And then did my college, got college out the way, joined a company that did contract work for the MOD, and which case I worked on electric units and black boxes for military aircraft, Tornado, F3, F2, Harrier GR5 and GR7, the Hawk, I'm trying to think what else, the early Typhoon, as it was the EF-5 at the time, the F2000 I think it was at the time. So, and signed a 30-year Official Secrets Act. So I did all that, and I did that for about 5 years. And then I took voluntary redundancy because I fancied doing something different. But I spent probably a few months going through different courses and stuff to find something I liked. And I kept a scrapbook, and I was going to throw it away, and then the sleeve of paper fell out. And on the back of a cutting I had was a local company called SMTS that built cars. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, Scale Model Technical Services. And I sort of rang him up and I said I was interested in what they did, and can I come up and have a look? And he said, yeah, sure. He said, yeah, if any time you like. He said, well, I'll take your number because we're interested in people who make models. So I went for a walk, come back, and then he was back on the phone and he called me up and he said, do you fancy coming for an interview on the Friday? And I said, yeah, sure. Okay, fine. So I went up there and he offered me a job there and then. So I ended up building model cars to begin with. Knew nothing of it. Obviously I had the model skills, but these are hand-built metal cars, white metal. And so I did that and then got an interest in pattern making. I'm making the masters. So he said to me, okay, well, make me a 1/43 DB2 out of tooling board, which is like wood, but in a resin. So I carved that by hand. He was pleased with that. That got cast into brass, and then some other chap finished up the parts. And I thought, I love this, is great. So I sort of carried on doing the building and that until 95 when I left and decided I wanted to work for myself or try and do something myself. And then for that next 17 or 18 years, I went to be self-employed, making patterns and masters for various people all over the place, of cars and ships and some aircraft, not very many, and doing stuff like that by hand. Usually, first of all, it's from brass. So I taught myself how to work with brass to make brass patterns. And then it was more towards tooling board, even more because the process changed and you could use the tooling board to put into the molds. So I did that for a number of years. And then I think it was 2011, I decided, after I'd been to a firm that did some 3D printing, that maybe it was time to move into the 3D world and go that way. So I taught myself 3D drawing basically from scratch, starting with a coffee mug. I was still making my models in the background, still making my plastic kits as always, because I never gave that up. I always loved doing that. But so yes, I taught myself 3D and then talked the company into doing it, saved them money, made the patterns more accurate, quicker to make as well. And then just progressed from there really. And so that's what I've been doing mainly all the time. Then like Paul said, I had a bit of a 2-year hiatus where I didn't do any model making, only my own plastic kits. And I went to Malmesbury, worked at Dyson because I was interested in all their 3D work and the 3D building and working with engineers and how they design stuff. And so I could pick up more information there. And then I decided to come back to it and then progressed even further where I've started to learn to draw the waterslide transfer artwork book. So I can do pretty much anything. And now I'm learning, thanks to Will pushing me a bit as well, some new CAD software because I haven't really got into CAD so much. So I'm learning this new CAD software, which is another journey and interesting. And now basically I met Will and Hiya, thankfully, through Mark Thompson from Plastech. And I think we've gone on from strength to strength from there. I find the guys exciting and driven, and it's quite the experience. Yeah, it's certainly set up a fire in my belly because I was only introduced to this side of the model making in the last year. That's why. Then that's basically my journey to where I am now. Yeah.
Well, there's been a lot of interest.
Fascinating career.
Yeah. It really has.
Yeah, it has. Interesting, yeah, for sure. And still even more interesting and exciting.
I was going to say, there's been a lot of interest around Skunk Works. So what is the relationship between yourselves and DBMK?
Well, like I say, I was introduced to Will and Hiya, and Will and Hiya put their trust in me and said, can you do the Bristol Centauros engine? So the Sea Fury, and also the seat and headrest to give them a bit more detail, and redo the spinner so it could be accurate because of the injection molding process. You can't take off the spinner because of the draft angles. And so I said, yeah, sure. And it was a bit daunting because I've never done an engine before. It's the first one I've ever drawn. So it's quite a challenge, and I do love a challenge. And basically in my spare time around work, I've been doing that. So that's kind of what made me start thinking, maybe there's something in this. And willy-nilly, again, put a lot of trust in me and told me things, and I just get to see things that are privileged and potentially what things you could do. So I thought, and what with the hybrid kits that they're pushing, it's something I feel I can fill a gap in. I want to be able to make some, I hope, very detailed interiors, other parts, ejection seats, as accurately as I can. So that's generally the relationship there. Is obviously we'll work with the guys even more on other projects. I was privileged to see the Spitfire 21, as you know. I did the interior for that. That was 3D printed. And I'm also working on the first built prototype of the 3D print set. It goes together and how it all is. And it's great to see it. It's great to see it come together and work with the guys just to do that sort of thing, because it's great for me. It's great. I can't get enough of it. That's the problem. It keeps me up.
Well, from an outsider looking in, I tell you what, the trust has been well placed, because that Centaurus engine, for anyone that hasn't seen it or been privileged enough to even see pictures of it, it's incredible. So what an amazing job. Incredible. Hats off to you.
And from somebody who's bought one and got it in their sticky mitts, it is exquisite. And I can't wait for the rest of the plastic to go around it once it's actually been delivered.
Very much appreciate that. Thank you very much. That's great to hear. I'm not one for adulation, as willy-nilly know, because I tend to shy away from it, but I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you. I'm pleased with it now, because sometimes when I finish a project, I just want to walk away from it, because I see it all the time. And it's only through yourselves and other people mentioning to me that they love it that I really appreciate now that kind of hit the nail on the head. So thank you very much for that.
I saw it at Telford. Will very kindly showed us the samples that they had on the table on the stand. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. So we've already seen the sea venom announced under Skunkworks. So what's the plans for that project?
Right. So again, detailed sets, 3D printed details, like a hybrid. There's still a lot of those sea venom sitting around in people's stashes, I think. It's still a kit that's quite around. Still today, people still have the Matchbox kit, and people have the Revell as well. So it's kind of what can I do? It's kind of, Will put the seed in my head. We were just talking about it, and it was like, I thought that would be a great project to do, because it's very difficult. It's very, very, how can I put it? It's a very detailed cockpit. It's very stuffed. There's a lot of things in there. So it's quite a challenge to try and fit that all in, and also take into account what people would have to take off, or like the interior, because Will kindly scanned the kit for me. So I've got something to work to in my software, and that would come out really well, actually. And basically I can draw it to that. So I'm practicing some new ideas, which you saw with the canopy. I don't know if it's in the picture, the canopy I did.
Yeah.
It's a proof of concept. I don't want to say any more about it, but I want to try something different. But whether or not it comes off, I don't know. But I'll say no more about that. So we'll wait and see if that works. But I'm going to start work on the detailed parts of that, basically, and just to make a good kit. I think with the added extras will make it look pretty fantastic, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. The cockpit is very sparse on the Matchbox kit. It is very basic. And I think you're going to absolutely batter my bank balance, because I've got 12 sea venoms in the stash.
See? I told you there's a few left around. I think Balder's got them all.
Yeah. I fancy doing some normal venoms and a Swedish one as well.
Ah.
The Swedish had the venoms, but yeah, it's just unfortunately the cockpit, the beautiful model to put together, but the cockpit just lets it down, and no one's ever done anything for it until now, which is like a Brucey bonus.
That's why I was glad that Will put me on it. Will put me on it. Yeah, Will was the one that mentioned it to you. So thank you for that, Will.
Yeah, I'm going to blame Will. He's going to take all my money.
Well, yeah.
I had the kit in 1981, and it just really, it's reasonably accurate. It just needs a bit TLC to bring it to the modern age. But yeah, I think it will. Chris is absolutely brilliant at this sort of thing, and I think it'll really do it justice. And I think it'll be hopefully very popular for him, and a good seller for him.
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping for that. I mean, this is new to me. So again, I'm grateful to many people for bringing me on board. And so Will and Ilya, Mark for introducing me. I also know Luke as well. I was introduced to Luke by Mike Williams, who does model building. So coming into this sort of side of the model making, I even thought of coming into is just, it's mind-blowing, to be fair. So much more to learn and so much more to soak up. So I think the Centaurus engine has done me a favour. It's kind of put me there. So now I've got to put my money where my mouth is and trying to think about a way of the skunk works. And that's why I decided to do that. So generally.
Yeah, and that cockpit for the Spitfire as well, Chris, again, incredible. Absolutely. So
yeah, just to be clear, sorry, Ilya, I didn't draw the cockpit for that. I only put it together. I 3D printed it.
Yeah, but the pictures that we saw of it was brilliant.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon.
Guys, can I add something to what Chris and Will said earlier? Will mentioned that a lot of people helped us with the information and everything else, and it's very much related to the Centaurus engine as well, because initially the idea was to ask Chris to produce the whole engine, and Chris done that. He's done an outstanding 3D model of it, but somebody who knows Sea Fury better than us told us that when you see a Centaurus engine without cowling on, that means it's getting replaced. And our question was, yeah, but how do you service it? And that person said, my dad was a mechanic on the aircraft carrier, and all they would do is just open the side panels. And that's when we came back to Chris and said, Chris, mate, we needed to do exactly like that, open hatches or doors of the cowling and to see only sides of it. So that's accuracy kicks in as well. So that's why we have Chris has set as it is rather than naked engine.
Okay, so one final question then. So, and finally, do you have an indicative timeline for when modelers might see the Sea Venom reaching the bench?
What, for the kit itself? I don't know anything about whether that'll be released or not. Don't know. I would hope so, because it's a good kit. Because sure, they could sell quite a few more, to be fair, because there's nothing out there.
No, Baldur's has got them all.
Yes.
But we could have a word with Luke at Revell to see if we could get it pushed back out.
There is that. Yes, that's very true. Yes. But no, I can't see. No, it's not. I don't know anything about that. So my thought was, as for this particularly, like you're saying, the timeline, it was just that Will mentioned it, and I think we felt there was plenty much kits out there already, and maybe for me this is like a test. It's a very good test because it's quite a complicated piece to make. I also got to thank Steve Long, who was introduced to by Will recently, so I wanted to say thanks to him for all the information, the photos he's sending through, because they're really helpful. So I've got a lot of photos, especially today. I got a lot of the ejection seat, the Martin Baker Mark 4A. So that's going to be helpful. So I just want to, create something as my own practice to see what I can make. And of course, there'll be other things as well, which I can't talk about at the moment, which we're considering as well. So, but it's in gestation for this sort of thing. So it's kind of exciting, and to be part and working along side Will and Ilya at DBMK, helping me and stuff like that is great. It's fantastic. I can't say any more than that, really.
Okay, well, with that, a huge thank you for the team at DBMK for joining us this special episode and obviously sharing the story behind the launch of the 32nd Sea Fury, a kit many modelers have been waiting for years to see arrive on the bench. But as you've heard today, that's not where the story ends. Two iconic machines are going to be covered in the near future, which a lot of us have been waiting for a very long time. And we'll be following those projects closely as they get developed, and I'm sure we'll be welcoming Ilya, Chris and Will back onto the show again in the future as developments arise with other things in the pipeline for DBMK. So, as always, Benchmates, if you enjoyed this special episode, please do share it with your modelling friends. Leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice and help spread the word about the show. So until the next time, from Boulders.
See y'all.
From Shane.
Take care, Benchmates.
From Will.
Thanks very much.
From Ilya.
Thank you very much and take care, everyone.
And from Chris.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me on. Take care. Bye.
It's a pleasure. And from myself, thank you much for listening. We'll be back again next week with our normal schedule, and we will have Spencer Pollard and Rob Vietzo talking modelling to a degree that you would never believe. But when we recorded it, we were just blown away by the conversation. It's one you won't want to miss. So with that, bye-bye for now. We'll see you soon. Before we taxi this episode fully back into the dispersal, Benchmates, just as we were putting this episode to bed on Tuesday, proof that DBMK goes that extra mile where research has come to light. And rather than leave the error in the show, we have a Mythbuster-style fun fact for you. You'll remember earlier we had a bit of fun referring to the early Allison engine P.51 line, particularly the A.36, as the Apache. Well, turns out history has just tapped us firmly on the shoulder, spun us around and applied a knee to the groin. Thanks to Will and some superb research from Colin Ford, we've both been put straight. The A-36 was never officially called the Apache by either North American Aviation or the United States Army Air Force. In fact, the name Mustang had already been selected by the United Kingdom Air Ministry as early as December 1940. And that name was formally adopted across the entire family, including the A-36, before the first aircraft were even delivered. So where did Apache come from? Well, it traces back to early North American marketing artwork and advertising concepts before the aircraft was fully established. The name cropped up in promotional material, stuck in the imagination, and decades later was mistakenly revived as if it were official. In reality, wartime crews flying the A-36 referred to them simply as Mustangs, or occasionally by the rather more evocative name Invader. And just to put a bow on it, later archival research, including original company documents and United States Army Air Force correspondence, confirmed that Mustang was the officially recognised name both across the P-51 and A-36 lines, a position now reflected by the National Museum of the United States Air Force. So, lesson learned and happily corrected. And to Colin, thank you for keeping us honest. Right, we now just need to do exactly the same for people referring to Spitfire and Roman numerals after the Mark 15, and people calling the Nat T1 the fallen Nat when it was Hawker Siddeley all along. With that, run the music, and remember, we are back next week with episode 27, when our guests are Spencer Pollard and the one and only Rob Rivietzo. We'll see you then. Bye for now.